Welcome to First Presbyterian Church, where faith is nurtured, curiosity encouraged, diversity welcomed, and all are loved. I'm Pastor Sue Coller. Today's sermon is from a worship service led by our online ministry team, and we focused on trusting God and how we move from fear to love in challenging times. Something I think we could all use a little bit of encouragement for in today's world. It was a unique service with worship participants and leaders in person and on Zoom from Lincoln, Nebraska, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and even from Malawi. From Malawi, we heard about the impact our online ministry had on one person and one community. I'm going to share that video with you after the sermon. We also shared some of what we are excited about regarding our online ministry and what's happening behind the scenes. There's a lot going on, and I think it's going to have a huge impact, not just on our online ministry, but the ministry of our whole church. So I'll share a little bit of that video with you after the sermon as well. I hope that both the sermon and these updates encourages you in difficult times as you hear about what God is doing both near and far. Let's begin with a reading from Psalm 23 and a reading from Matthew 5.
Friends, as we read the 23rd Psalm, I invite you to remember that this is written for you. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. The Lord makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside quiet waters. The Lord refreshes my soul. The Lord guide me along the right path for the Lord's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever.
In the book of John, Jesus said, I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. And so in Matthew 5, Jesus gives us a series of blessings, which we call the Beatitudes. In this harsh world filled with a lack of generosity and love, Jesus' words continue to speak of the purity of humility, compassion, and helping others. And so we hear him say, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who came before you.
Over the past month, we have been taking seriously the fact that we live in a broken world. We live in a world where divisiveness and hatred and fear are the currencies that are spent so freely. We take this world seriously because, number one, we live in it. And whatever's going on in this world impacts each one of us. But we also take seriously our role in this world because our faith doesn't allow us to withdraw. As tempting as that might be sometimes, to just put our head in the sand and just ignore everything that's going on and say, can't we all just get along? Wouldn't that be so nice if that were our reality? But we are called as people of faith to be active in the world, no matter how broken. In fact, perhaps maybe because of how broken it is. It is a dangerous world out there. We are afraid to talk to each other. We are afraid to engage with people who are on the opposite end of the political or religious spectrum. As you watch political ads, and even as you listen to some preachers, you realize that fear is the number one tool used to try to get people to do what they want. And of course, fresh in our mind is the brutal attack on Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband by someone whose goal was to make us all afraid and to humiliate those he disagreed with. See, fear is a powerful motivator, and not in a good way. Those of us who grew up in more of a Baptist evangelical type tradition certainly are familiar with the fire and brimstone preaching. It's like you have to believe certain things, you have to do certain things, or you're going to go suffer eternal punishment. You're going to end up in hell. That happens on the physical plane as well. We use fear to try to get people to do what we want, or we threaten them with some sort of great disaster or tragedy that will befall them or the world if they don't do what we want. So fear is the currency, unfortunately, in our world right now. But we worship a God who says, do not be afraid. Over and over and over. It is repeated more than anything else in all of Scripture. God and God's messengers saying, do not be afraid. And I think one reason that it is repeated so often in Scripture is that it is so much easier said than done. Because it's not just fear of what will happen politically if this person or that person gets elected. It's not just fear about nuclear war as we see North Korea and Russia rattle their sabers. It's about what the doctor will say after you go in for tests. It's about what your spouse will say after your umpteenth fight, what your retirement will look like if the economy fails, how your friend will respond after a difficult conversation. Fear comes from many different things and takes many different forms. But we keep hearing God say, do not be afraid. Right. How do we do that? How do we look at our world and look at what's going on in our lives and choose trust over fear? Not trusting that all will be well, meaning that the things we fear won't happen, because honestly, sometimes they do. Sometimes the things we're afraid of actually happen. But how do we trust that in spite of the diagnosis, in spite of the election results, in spite of how the market performs, in spite of how your spouse reacts, in spite of the growing violence and rhetoric? How do we trust that, as the English mystic Julian of Norwich said, all will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well? If you're not familiar with Julian of Norwich, she's one of my favorite mystics. She lived in the Middle Ages. She survived the Black Plague. She watched family and friends die of the plague. She witnessed and lived through political revolts and religious persecutions that saw countless people burned at the stake. And yet still she came out and said, all will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. Her belief was that God can make good come out of even the most difficult times. I have certainly found that to be true in my life, and I know some of you have found that to be true in your life as well. It doesn't mean the things that happened were good, but God could bring good out of even the most difficult times. Think about the 23rd Psalm and pair it with what comes before it, and you get an idea of what Julian of Norwich was talking about. The Reverend Dr. Allison Bowden, in a sermon at Princeton University in 2016, points out Psalm 23 follows right on, guess what, Psalm 22. And do you know what happens in Psalm 22? It's what Jesus quoted from the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? The darkest moment of Jesus' life. Psalm 23 answers that cry as a testimonial of trust in God. Trust that the lowest point in any person's existence is a single moment and the opposite of their destiny. How do we live into that kind of trust? That no matter what happens, it's a single moment and it is not the end of the story. How do we remind ourselves that the lowest point in our lives and the fears we live with and the violence we're surrounded with are not the end of the story? How do we move forward with faith and trust? That's where we turn to Matthew 5. Matthew 5 is a collection of Jesus' sayings about what it means to live life with a sense of hope and purpose in the midst of a world that gives you so many reasons not to. Jesus' answer to a world that tries to bury hope is simply, you move from fear to trust by putting love into action, even when you have every reason not to. Jesus was God's love put into action on our behalf. What would happen if, regardless of how we felt, we made a choice to become God's love in action for others? What if we made that choice to show mercy to those who need it, whether they deserve it or not? What if we made a choice to comfort those who mourn, whether we like them or not? What if we made a choice to stand up for justice, whether it applied to us personally or not? What if we worked for peace? By believing that the world we hope for and the world God promises is possible, that leads us to take actions that combat fear. Someone once asked Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel how we could possibly bring children into a world that produced the Holocaust. And I don't remember his exact words, but it was basically, children are a statement of hope in the future. In the face of all the reasons to give up hope, I choose to have children. That's love in action. When we do things and say things to the fearmongers that they don't have any power over us, we could make a different choice. We can choose a different way. We can choose to build people up and not prey on their fears. We can choose to give hope and not try to take it away. We can choose to love when others hate. In fact, we even choose to love the haters. When we put love into action, even when we're afraid, we not only become a beacon of hope to others, we chip away at the place fear holds in us. Because fear can never stand in the face of real love. So again, how do we do that? How do we choose love over fear? Well, first, remember we're not alone. I love the 23rd Psalm. We are guided and accompanied by God on our journey. And my favorite phrase in there is, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, those darkest moments, God is with us. My second favorite part of the 23rd Psalm, where it talks about being surrounded by our enemies, and God sets a table before us, as if to say to our enemies, you are powerless. Read those Psalms and remind us of those promises of God to always be with us. And read Matthew 28, where Jesus says, I am always with you. Practice Matthew 25 and do those things to put love into action in spite of all the reasons not to. And look to those who are already putting love into action, even in difficult circumstances, and be encouraged by them. Draw strength from them. We sometimes forget that we don't have to make it alone. We're part of a community. We are here for each other, especially when fear takes hold. So let's remind each other and show each other that love is always more powerful than fear, and only love can give hope. Fear's only power is to take it away. I know which path I want to walk. I hope you'll join me on that. Hope you'll join me in showing mercy and compassion, helping others, speaking up for others. And here's my one political statement, so fair warning: vote. It is so easy to look at what's happening around us and say, what good is my vote going to do? What difference can I possibly make? In fact, there's polls showing that many younger people are choosing not to vote because they are saying, us older people, and unfortunately I probably fall into that category now, us older people have basically ruined the world and there's no space for them in it. And so they aren't even voting. Vote. Because that is another way that we choose to say, we believe the world can be better, and we want to be a part of bringing hope and not fear to this world. Love in action doesn't give up. It stands up and it says there is a better way. So don't give up. Make your voice heard. And even if you do feel like you're the lone voice, do it anyway, because I can guarantee you, you're not. So practice putting love into action. Stand up in the face of fear and know you are not alone. Do those things that give hope to others. And if you're a little fearful about doing some of them, grab a friend. Take them with you and invite them to join you. The more you do it, the more you will learn to trust that God is in it. And the more you will see, as Julian of Norwich said, all will be well, all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. For God is always at work, bringing life out of death and hope out of fear, whenever and wherever love in action is found. In just a moment, we're going to sing, "Open My Eyes That I May See." May that be our prayer as we ask God to open our eyes and our ears to signs of hope and our mouths that we may proclaim it in a world that needs it. Don't let fear have the last word. Amen. So I want to share with you that update of what's going on in our online ministry and the video of what's happening in Malawi. So watch and enjoy and let us celebrate what God is doing.
Hi everyone, my name is Patsubokosi and I was a member of First Presbyterian Church in Lincoln many years ago. I actually went to Sunday school there. I was baptized there. Then in 2010, I came back to Malawi, my home country. So I stayed connected with the church through the Facebook page. Then one day, that was in March 2022, this year, I saw Pastor Sue advertising for a class on prayer. So that was one aspect I wanted to work on. I wanted to work on prayer. I felt like I wasn't that good at praying, especially in front of people. So I wanted to work on that. I joined the class, the Zoom class. With the time difference, what I usually did was just I would watch the videos after the class, like the next day. But I did try, I think that was 2 times, to attend the Zoom meeting, which because of the time difference, it was about, I think, 2 a.m. Malawi time. So I would set my alarm on my phone so that I could attend the sessions that I attended. And I'm happy to say that after the lessons, I'm more confident in prayer. I'm actually able to volunteer to pray, especially in a church or the home cell prayers in our neighborhood. So yeah, then I started talking to pastors too here and there. So one day I asked her, because I had won a World Connect grant to build a school block, but we were unable to finish the block because the community was unable to mobilize the funds to finish the block. So what was left was painting the doors and burger bars for the windows. So I actually reached out to Pastor Sue and asked if maybe the church could assist us in finishing the school block, which she said that it was possible and she would talk to the mission. And so that worked out. The money was sent and the school block was finished. So now the kids are able to enjoy a complete school block, thanks to the First Presbyterian Church family.
Sometimes we don't really see the impact that we have beyond our friends and the people who sit in the pew with us. I want to thank you all here in person, because many of you have had the vision of the impact this church can have, not just in our own neighborhood, but much further than that. The school block that Patso was talking about is 2 classrooms that house about 500 children that now can walk just a half mile to go to school instead of 5 miles. And you know what? $500 from us made that difference. So it doesn't take much sometimes, but thank you for believing in what God can do through us.
Lots of people go into the online ministry that we do today, as well as the groups that have been meeting, over a year now. And we have read books on the subject. We have looked at other congregations and what they're doing across the country. And we quickly realized that there are about as many ways to approach this as there are different churches. We even found one online worship option that used virtual reality. Don't worry, we're not going to give you headsets, and we're not going to be doing that. But there is a church that, if you have a headset, you can join in a virtual sanctuary and walk around and talk to people online. But there are a lot of different options, and so we have employed the help of a consulting company, Capsule, that has done this, worked on this with us, and worked on with this with other churches. They are currently in the process of helping us map out a roadmap and a plan to achieve our goals. If you think about where people interact today, they may work online, they do all sorts of recreational activities online. So our goal is to meet them online as well for worship. It's not just viewing a video or a recorded service. It's an interactive engagement. We want to figure out how to develop a full, robust ministry that engages and cares for others online, just like we've been doing here for 150 years in our church here in Lincoln. So we want you to know that your generous gifts of time, dollars, skills, especially prayer, make the worship and work of this church possible, whether it's online or here in person. And we just saw an example of that in Malawi. 500 students, a place for education. If it were not for our online ministry, we wouldn't have reconnected with Patso or even known of this need and been able to help. So your gifts today make it possible for us to respond to other needs as they come up. For those of you who are online, we've put in the chat, I don't know if we've joined online again, but how you can give by text or online, and you can click on the tab on our website.
Thank you for watching. I hope this has given you something that lifts up your spirits and gives you hope for the world. but also gives you something concrete that you can do to bring hope into this world and into your life. God bless, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us at First Presbyterian Church, where faith is nurtured, curiosity encouraged, diversity welcomed, and all are loved. Find out more about us at fpclincoln.org or find us on Facebook.